Processing tab is where you get a lot of things done inside of the Production Assistant tool when you're using it with Sony Vegas Pro. In the Process tab, we can add any number of batch processes or individual processes. Now remember, these processes can be applied to the timeline or they can be applied to files that are going to render in the background. So let's dig into how the different file processes work and what each one of the different file processes can do for you. To add a process to the processing bar or the processing dialog, we're going to click on the Add button, and this shows us the processes that we can add. Now the first process is Adjust Playback Rate. This allows us to speed up or slow down our media in various values. Now we can either tick it down by using the spinner, or we can type in a value to change the speed. Now why would we want to do this? There's a number of reasons you might want to use this. It might be that you've got a number of clips that you want to batch slow down, or it might be that you're doing a training video and you want to speed things up just a little bit. Maybe you've got a speaker who's just a little bit too slow, maybe a little too modulated. You could use this to speed the voice up in order to fit the voice into a specific range. So that's one of the primary benefits of working with the adjustable playback rate. So you can slow things down in a batch format, or you can speed up an entire timeline or speed up a series of clips that you might want to go a little bit faster to help move time along a little bit better. Cancel out of that. Next process is our broadcast color process. When we click OK here, this opens up this device that allows us to color correct for a variety of different things. For instance, if we've got low light repair where the lighting was poor, and this is very common when you're dealing with small HDV camcorders or some of the less expensive DV camcorders. It might be that your media was shot under fluorescent lighting, but it wasn't properly white balanced. Indoor white balance repair for tungsten, and stage lighting repair where you've got some spotlights. Now you want to experiment a little bit with this as you're working with each of the different presets that are here to see which one is going to work best for you and your media. We'll cancel out of that. Click Add again. Cinelook. This is one of the things that VAST is very well known for, are the different film looks that we offer. And there's a lot of film looks that come inside the application itself. One of the things that's really popular in broadcast television today, whether it's a series piece or an episodic piece or just a local segment, is having a specific look that matches the feel and the attitude of that particular show. For instance, if it's a hard-hitting, aggressive type of a news show, you might want things a little bit more cold so they appear to be less emotional. If it's a food show, you might want to pop certain kinds of colors. If it's a basic news broadcast or a straight-ahead show, you might want to warm things up a little bit. Or if it's a feel-good, Dr. Phil type of a show, you might want to warm those colors up by adding some more reds. These Cinelooks allow you to do this across the board to all the media that was shot for your particular project. Let's have a look at how some of those appear. Now here off to the side of the window you can see the original photograph and the process. You can see this is a dramatically saturated look, heavy on the blue. We'll look at push 16mm. Here's another highly saturated, slightly brightened up look. This is a very popular look and has won many film contests. Here's something that's very cold, called Winter's Coming. You can see it pulls out most of the color and adds a little bit of pop to the whites. We'll just slide down a little bit more. Here's a John Wayne Western, and again you can see some of the saturation has been removed from sky colors and so forth, but yet saturation has been dramatically increased in the reds and the blues. Here's a warm film look, deeply saturated colors all the way across the board, excepting the sky areas. Now here you can see some examples of television shows that use some of these looks, like Collateral and Miami Vice. And again, more of the color look there. So we can get an idea of some of the different looks that are available to us and what types of shows, or suggestions of what types of shows have used some of these looks. So here's a very cool look. This is a very popular look on television today, is certain saturated colors with a heavy push toward the blue. Now we can add these film looks to selected tracks. In other words, it might be that you're doing a training video where you want to affect only the talking head portions but not the screenshots for any software or PowerPoint you might be showing. Or we can apply it to a master bus so that it affects everything, including titles, on the timeline. So you can see you've got an awful lot of choices of different colors here. So we give you nearly 80 different types of film looks or cine looks in the application overall. Let's cancel out of this. We'll go to the Add tab again. Create an image sequence. Creating an image sequence is something that we cover elsewhere in the DVD, as this is predominantly an output option. This is going to be something you'll use if you're outputting image sequences to, say, a third-party compositing tool or a 3D application, or maybe it is that you just want to export a series of stills and thumbnails to be used on a web page. So you can have it set up to record at every single frame, in which case we change this to 0.01. Now it's capturing one picture for every frame. Or we could set it up so that it was capturing a frame every 5 seconds, in which case it would be 05.00. Or every 5 minutes, we'll backspace that again, and that's going to be 05.00.00. And so we've got that now set up to capture every 5 minutes. That might be a great way to pull some representative stills for you to drop on a web page. Now this is going to indicate where you want them to save off, and you can set them up to go anywhere you want. Of course, you're not going to use the default location, which is the My Documents folder, but you can set this up to go to any external drive or internal drive. You have a choice of JPEG or PNGs. If you're going to use the PNG or the Portable Network Graphic format, it is going to take a little bit longer to output that PNG file. It does support transparency, so if you're using a 32-bit alpha channel file, this allows you to export that PNG and get the transparency. We also have JPEG format. It's a little bit smaller, but the pictures are going to be substantially more compressed. You can also drop markers, and the markers will instruct the image sequence to take frames exactly where those markers lie. So perhaps as you're editing your project, you might want to drop some markers saying, this is the thumbnail that I'd like to pull from my project. Those thumbnails can be used for menu options on a DVD and so forth. Let's cancel out of that. Choose Add. Next, create markers. This is a very large, powerful tool. We can choose a variety of different marker types. We can create CD markers, CD region markers, command markers, markers, or regions. Now, for instance, command markers are something that we would insert if we were creating a web-based video where we were doing text overlays in a Windows media file. So if we were creating something that was Rule 508 compliant and we needed to insert subtitles, we'd insert command markers at particular points in the media. If we were creating an audio CD, we would use CD regions to mark the different songs. Markers are just like sticky notes. They really don't have anything to do with what happens in the overall file. And then regions. Regions are great for when we're doing batch processing. We can identify specific regions as to areas that we want to render out. Naming. We have a number of naming conventions. We could use the active take name, in other words, the name of the clip. We could use the base name or the base name with image sequence numbers. So in other words, the project name or the base name with a project or the project name with sequencing numbers. So it might be called Golf Test 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Now we can create markers in a timeline selection or across the entire project by choosing one of these two options here. We can create markers at each individual event. We can create markers at various intervals. We can evenly space markers. In other words, if we've got 10 minutes worth of project and we tell it that we want it to have 10 markers, it will space one marker per every 1 minute. We can create regions from selected events. It might be that we want to select several events or several spaces of events and create regions based around those events. We can create markers on beats. In other words, if we have our project set up so that we're working on beats or music time, we can create a marker on every beat. So we might say every 4 beats or every 8 beats. So we have some options there. We can also create markers from embedded markers and regions. Let's cancel out of the marker options. Let's click the Add to bring up our next process, and let's choose Image Background Underlay. And we'll choose a look here. We've got a variety of different looks, and you can see what each look is in the preview window there. Let's choose this Northern Lights. Okay. So let's choose that as our background. We can see here we've got this image background, and we can go in and add a video file. Remove all of this and go find a piece that's 4:3 media. Right, now we'll just tell this that we want it to process. Choose Process. It's going to add that media to the timeline. And so here we can see that underlay, and you can see that in the background we've got some slight movement. We don't want much movement back there because it'll detract from the video that we've got. So we've got some color here that matches the color of the rocks and the color of the climber's shirt. So we've basically taken this 4:3 SD media and put it into a widescreen mode so that we haven't lost resolution. So that's one of the better features of the softwares that will allow us to create these 16:9 backgrounds and while repurposing our 4:3 media. You can build your own templates that will lie underneath here that will say high definition, or maybe a station identification, or perhaps a worship logo or something else related to your business. So let's remove the media. Go back to our processing tab and remove our processing as well. Let's click the add button again. Choose image overlay. This allows us to lay over a station ID bug. We've looked at this once before, and we can set this up so that we're adding an image over across the entire video at intervals. In this particular case, it's set up for once every 10 minutes. We can distribute it evenly, so again, if we've got a 10-minute project and we tell it that we want it to display 10 times, it will pop up every 1 minute mark. And here we're going to go in and choose the file name that we'd like to overlay. So you may have something in here already. In this particular case, I've got this school bug that we can lay over top of everything. And you can see how that's going to fill up the entire frame. If you're going to use the image overlay, you want to use your image editor or graphic image editor such as Photoshop or Photo Studio or whatever tool you use to create your image in a 720 by 480 or a 1440 by 1080 or a 1280 by 720. In other words, the resolution that your project is working at is how you're going to want to create this bug with a transparency. I recommend that you use only a PNG file format or a target file format. Avoid using the TIFF file format because that's a much slower process, and TIFF requires that you have an external reader such as QuickTime installed on your machine. You probably already have QuickTime, but there's no reason to slow yourself down. You gain no quality by using TIFF. So use a PNG or a target format so that you've got that 32-bit transparency channel in your overlaid media. We'll cancel out of that. Go to Add and Reduce Interlace Flicker. This is something that you're going to want to add to any stills that you might put on the timeline, or if you've got something where you're shooting very fine lines that are horizontal across the screen. Perhaps you've shot a building with lots of horizontal lines from bricks and so forth, and you want to convert it to progressive scan imagery. This is a great way to do it. Remove that and click on Add. And the widescreen converter. We've already looked at this one time earlier in this DVD, but what we've got here is the ability to convert a 4:3 project to widescreen. We're going to reduce the interlace flicker in most instances. You may want to convert this to 30p, and you can do this on selected events only. So there might be a situation where you're mixing and matching footage on the timeline. So in other words, if you've got some 4:3 media and you've got some widescreen media and you want to match the aspect ratio of only the 4:3 media to match the widescreen, then you're going to go through and select the events and then run this particular process. So again, we have the option of dumping everything in as a batch converter, or we can select files on the timeline and run this process. How do we do that? Remember, we check on the source tab that we're going to use the current project as source. So it all comes back to that source tab. Are we using the current project, or are we using media that's in a bin that we've dropped in from the outside? We'll click out of this, and that gets us through all of the different tools that are in the processing tab. And you can access some of your more common presets in here. You can even create some of your own presets. So let's look at how to create a preset. Go to the Edit tab. So let's add a preset here. Let's say, for instance, we want to adjust the playback rate. Choose OK. Let's set the playback rate at half speed, which would be 0.5. And choose OK. Now we've just created a half modify here, so we're going to call this half speed playback rate. We choose the save icon here, and that allows us to save that particular preset. So now we can go in and look at image overlay, where we've called up a specific type of media that's going to lay over the top. In this case, we see the VAST logos come up. Or maybe we're going to convert 4:3 to widescreen. We'll look at the presets there. Currently it's only converting to widescreen without any other additional changes. Or maybe we want to have a half speed playback rate. We can see here it comes up at half speed. So this is a way that you can save these presets off to work exactly the way you'd like them to work. So it's really easy to modify the existing templates to do what you'd like them to do for your particular workflow. And again, that's where Production Assistant can really save you time, is setting up some templates that work with your particular workflow, saving them in there and using them as either timeline selections or using them as batch conversion tools when you're not going to be around. This gets us through all of the tools that you're going to find in the Production Assistant plugin for Sony Vegas Pro software. Once again, my name is Douglas Spotted Eagle. Thanks for spending this little bit of time with me. Now it's up to you to explore the tools found in Production Assistant to see how they'll best work for you and your workflow.